We're going to make an everyday deco mesh wreath today. Hello, hello, come on in. All right, friends, we're going to be building our wreath on this 15-inch wreath work frame. And so if you're not familiar with these, friends, they come to you with the ties already attached. There are 18 of the ties, and it's 15 inches in diameter. And we're going to be building our wreath with 10-inch deco mesh today. This is going to have kind of a farmhouse vibe. We're going to be using two different colors of the 10-inch deco mesh, and we're going to be using both the poof and the curl method. So we're going to start with this 10-inch, it's kind of an olive green deco mesh. And we'll be using this for the poofs. And you can start your poofs on the top rung or the bottom. Each level, as you can see here, there's 3 wire rungs, the bottom, the middle, and the top. The middle has no ties attached to it. It's just for stability. So there are 9 ties, these are called ties, on the bottom level and 9 on the top for a total of 18. And we want our poofs to be 10 inches in length. So what I'm going to do is start on this bottom level. I'm going to grab my deco mesh here. Just going to gather it, kind of scrunch and gather on the bottom. And then I like to turn this end under. As you can see, deco mesh likes to fray if you've not worked with it before. And so I like to tuck ends under to try to prevent that fray. And then on my first set of ties here, I'm going to grab my deco mesh, add it to the center of this tie all the way at the base. And I'm just going to give it a firm twist. Now we're going to be adding more mesh into it in a short bit, so you don't want it super tight, just enough to hold your mesh. And then where this tie is at, we need to measure the mesh at 10 inches. So I'm going to keep that on the 10-inch mark. I'm going to pull it over to the 0 starting mark on my measuring mat here, my self-healing mat. If you don't have a self-healing mat, you're welcome to use a ruler, a tape measure. You could also pre-measure out a piece of tape and lay it on your table, but you want that to be 10 inches. And at 10 inches, you're going to scrunch and gather to make a poof, okay? And then on the inside of your fingers, because that's where your 10-inch mark is, you're going to come to your next set of ties, add your poof into that set of ties all the way at the base, and give it a tight twist or two to hold it in place. And then you're going to, what I call, fluff out your poof. And you don't need to be real picky with it, friends. You're just going to give it a little curvature so that it's bubbling up. And then we're going to do it again. So you're going to put your ties that we just tied down on that 10-inch mark, run your mesh to that 0 starting point, scrunch and gather so that you got your next 10-inch poof. And move on to your next set of ties, stuff that in all the way to the base, and give it a couple of tight twists just to hold it in place. Fluff out your poof, and on to the next. Place that last set of ties that we used on the 10-inch mark, Run your mesh to your 0 starting mark. Scrunch and gather to create your poof. Go to your next set of ties. Add that in all the way down to the base. Give it a couple of tight twists. Fluff out your poof. Now we've added 3. We're going to do this all the way around the bottom level. And then once we get to that last tie, I'll meet you back here and we'll jump up to the top level. All right, friends, so we've made our poofs all the way around the bottom level. We've just got one more poof to go to connect from our last lower level set of ties to the first. But before you do that, friends, go ahead and plug in your glue gun so that it can be heating up while we finish adding in our deco mesh. All right, so for this last poof, we're going to go from the last set of ties to the first. We want that to be 10 inches, just like before. So go ahead and measure that out at 10 inches and gather that up in your hand, scrunching and gathering. Come over to the first place where we tied this down. Gently open up your ties and shove that poof right down in there on top of that first set. Give it a really good push and one tight twist or 2 to hold that fellow in place. And now we've added our poofs all the way around the lower level of our wreath. And so now it's time to jump up to the top level. And you're going to do the exact same thing, friends, with the exception of now we want your poofs to be 8 inches in length, not 10, because we want the top layer of poofs to be slightly smaller than the lower. So take your deco mesh where we just left off at, pulling it tight. We're not making a poof yet. Pull it up to the top ring to the closest set of ties and add it in. And there's no poof from that bottom level to the top. We're just jumping up here to this top level at that first available set of ties and cinching it down in with a couple of tight twists. Now, just like the bottom level, we're going to be opening these back up to add some more deco mesh in just a bit. So just a couple of tight twists to hold that in place. And find the 8-inch mark on your measuring mat or your ruler, whatever you're using. Pull your mesh back to the 0 starting mark and pinch and gather to make that poof, just like we did on the bottom level. And then carry that poof to your next set of ties here on this upper level. Shove that down into your ties at the base there. A couple of tight twists to hold it in place. Fluff out your poof and do it all over again. So those ties that we leave off at, find that 8-inch mark. Pinch and gather, pinch and gather, pinch and gather to create that poof. Hold on to it with your hand and move to that next set of ties. Add it in right down to the base. And give it a couple of tight twists to hold that in place. Fluff out your poof and move on to the next poof. Go ahead and add your 8-inch poof into each tie, working your way all the way around that upper level, and I'll meet you back when we get to the last set of ties. All right, friends, we're ready to add this last poof from our last set of ties and jumping it to the first. So just like before, find your 8-inch mark to create that 8-inch poof. Pinch and gather, and go ahead and take that poof from your last set of ties to this first set of ties at the upper level. Gently untwist those ties with one hand while you're holding your poof in place with the other. Stuff that down into the center of those ties and give it a couple of tight twists. All right, and now we need to cut off this deco mesh. So you're really going to be careful not to cut mesh you don't want to cut, but leaving about an inch, go ahead and just cut that mesh off. And it's going to be all nice and tucked in here, so I promise you're not going to see it. Perfect. And now we've got our first layer of 10-inch deco mesh into our 15-inch work frame. All right, friends, so now it's time to move on to the next step of our deco mesh prep. So go ahead and take your wreath frame and set it off to the side. And grab your self-healing mat or your scissors and tape measure, whatever you're going to use to measure. And I've got this tan 10-inch deco mesh that looks very much like burlap, but it is deco mesh. And then I've got 10-inch black and white check mesh that's going to go good with our sign and ribbon choice that I'll show you in a short bit. And so remember, friends, we've got 18 ties on our work wreath frame. And so we need 9 of each of these 10-inch deco mesh. And so I'm going to just lay one on top of the other. If you're using scissors, you can just cut it individually, but I'm going to cut 9 because remember we've got this married up together. 10-inch pieces of deco mesh, and I'm not going to worry about that jagged edge. Just like that. So either using your rotary cutter and your self-healing mat or your scissors, go ahead and cut 9 pieces of each of the black and white check and the tan, and I'll meet you back here. All right, friends, so now you should have 9 pieces of the tan and 9 pieces of the black and white buffalo check cut into 10-inch pieces. We're going to take a pause from the deco mesh to prepare our sign. So remember, this is going to be just an everyday farmhouse welcome wreath. So I've got this welcome sign that we'll be using. So I'm going to cut off that twine that came with the sign. We don't need that. And then I'm going to add some mounting brackets. So these are 1-inch plastic mounting brackets. I probably purchased them from Amazon or Deco Exchange. And so they've got holes that run through them so that you can attach things from any direction, and some 3M sticky tape. So hopefully you had plugged in your glue gun because we're going to need that. We're going to actually add a mounting square to each end of our sign here. I just feel like some hot glue gives it an extra bit of stability. So right in the middle on the end, put a good drop of glue and add your mounting square right onto that glue. And it doesn't have to be perfectly straight, friends. No one's going to see it. Give it a good 15-second push or so. And then take your glue gun and run a bead of glue right around that bracket so that your glue is running both on your mounting square and your sign to just really give it a good, sturdy, secure adherence. And then flip your sign over, and we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. Just go ahead and set your sign off to the side to give it some dry time. Go ahead and grab your wreath base. So it's looking pretty good. However, it's a little bit see-through, and we don't want that. We want it to be light and airy, but solid. And so we're going to add some more deco mesh into our ties. And so we've got several pieces that we had cut of the black and white check, and several pieces, 9 of each actually, of this tan burlap looking deco mesh. They are 10 inches in length, and we're just going to let them curl up. So take your piece of deco mesh, curl it up so that the diameter's, 1.5 inches to 2 inches in depth. In the center of that curl, give it a pinch. Find a set of ties. Carefully open those ties back up. Place your curl right down into the center of those ties, making sure that the seam side is down. Press it all the way into the base and give it a couple of tight twists. And because we have 2 colors, friends, we're going to alternate back and forth between the black and white check and the burlap. So now, since we just added the black and white check, we'll go ahead and add the burlap. So just let it curl up as it wants to, about 1.5 inches to 2 inches thick. Give it a pinch in the center. Carefully open up your ties. Add your curl down in all the way to the base, making sure that that seam is seamed down, and give it a couple of good tight twists. So we're going to work our way through all of our stems, friends, alternating back and forth between the black and white check and the burlap, going every other on both the top and the bottom rungs, and then I'll meet you back here. So now we've got our deco mesh fully loaded into the base of our wreath. We've got 10-inch poofs on the bottom row, 8-inch poofs on the top row, and we've added 1 10-inch curl into every tie. And each of the curls are 10-inch deco mesh measured at 10 inches in length. And we've just curled them up and added them in. So our base is really coming together nicely. The next step is to add in our decorative sign. So I've pulled our sign back out, and I'm actually going to use Chanel stems or pipe cleaners to get our sign attached in. And you're going to need 4 of the pipe cleaners. I always try to match the pipe cleaners somewhat, although for this particular wreath, you're really not going to see them. So whatever you have available is fine. And because our wreath base is pretty deep, I'm going to guess, 8 inches or so. Yep, it's between 7 and 8 inches deep. We're going to have to use 2 of the Chanel stems on each mounting bracket. And so what I mean by that, we need to make them longer. They're just not long enough to connect all the way through. And so we're going to marry 2 pipe cleaners together to give us double the length. So make an X at your ends, leaving about 1.25 inches of each Chanel stem or pipe cleaner sticking out. Hold down where it's crossing. Take your first pipe cleaner and twist. You're just wrapping them into one another. And then do the same thing for your other end. And so what that does is we've married 2 pipe cleaners together to give us some extra length. Once you do that, run the pipe cleaner through your mounting bracket. You'll have to kind of give it a shove once you get to where you've married it, because it does not like that. If it won't let you, that's okay. This one's getting, it's too wide, so it won't go through. And so I'm just going to give it 2 gentle twists just so it doesn't get squirrely. It's okay if one end is longer than the other. And then we'll do the same thing on the other end. Just cross them over, hold at the cross, and twist, twist, twist on both sides to marry those 2 together. And then run them through your mounting bracket, halfway or as far as it'll let you go. And then give it a couple of gentle twists just so that that pipe cleaner doesn't get squirrely and come off of there. And so now we need to attach our sign to our wreath. And you can put this at the bottom. You could put this at the top or bottom. I'm going to put mine right in the middle, friends. And so I want to make sure that these top level twists are not pointing towards the center. They'll get buried here. I'm going to eyeball my center. And then once I've done that, I'm going to run my pipe cleaners through, and then I'll flip it over and attach. But you can't poke the pipe cleaners through the mesh, friends. So you have to basically run it parallel here to where the ties are at, so that you can get through your mesh and tie those things off. So I'm just feeling with my hands to poke that through. I'm going to hold my sign while I flip over this wreath. And then making sure you've got your chenille stems going over to the innermost wire and the middle wire, and give it just a couple of twists, a couple of fairly tight twists. But we're not going to totally tie it off until we get the other side added, just to make sure we're really getting good placement. All right, so again, I want mine in the middle. It's looking pretty good. So I'm just going to eyeball where to run that through. And then just like before, I'm going to hang on to my sign, flip my wreath base over, and then making sure that the chenille stems go across the inner and middle. Make sure that's where I want it. Give it a couple of loose or semi-tight twists just to hold it in place for now, to make sure we're happy with the placement of the sign. And I am, friends. That's a great central location. So I'll just do a quick check here. Make sure those ties from our wreath frame aren't buried underneath our sign. Everything looks good. So we're going to flip it over one more time. And now we're really going to, not super tight, but give it a good firm 6 or 7 twists. Just to make sure that's really anchored down nicely. And then you can use your scissors or your wire snips and trim off the excess chenille stems. We probably could have used just one, but I wasn't sure, so I went ahead and married the 2. Once you cut off your ends, just kind of curl those chenille stems up and in so that they're not poking you or your customer or your door. All right, just like before, 5 or 6 good tight twists to really anchor that guy down. Cut off your leftover pipe cleaners and toss them. And curl that end up and in. All right, guys, we've got our sign attached and it is looking good, looking cute. Definitely has a cute country vibe. So the next step, we're going to add 2 bows, and I think we'll put them catty corner from one another. So I'll probably put one here and one here. So let's set this off to the side and I'll show you the ribbons that we're going to use. So again, we've got a little bit of a farmhouse vibe going on. So the ribbons that I've chosen are a 2.5-inch wired black and white check, a 2.5-inch wired burlap and white stripe, a 1.5-inch wired cream and black stripe, and a 1.5-inch wired burlap and black and white check. I'm going to quickly work my way through these bows, friends, and put this on a quick speed. However, if you struggle with making bows and would like a step-by-step follow-along tutorial, go ahead and take a pause when you need to. I will link below in the description 2 additional quick tutorials. One will show you how to use the bow dabra, and the other will show you how to make a quick hand bow. All right, friends, I'm going to make these 2 bows and I'll meet you right back here. Okay, so now we've got our 2 ribbon stacks, and if you're new to my videos, friends, I know that a lot of people prefer to fluff these out before they attach them to their wreath or their door hanger, but I actually generally do so afterwards. So that's what we're going to do today as well. So here's our wreath. And remember, I'm going to add 1 to the upper left corner and 1 to the bottom right. And I made my bow stacks exactly the same. And so for each of these ribbon types, friends, I've just got 2 loops and 2 tails for each of the types of ribbon. So I'm going to add this to this upper left set of ties, press it all the way down in and give it 2 or 3 really tight twists to make sure that's good and attached. And then I'm going to trim off the remaining length of those ties. And we'll fluff this out. I always fluff from the bottom up, and there's no right or wrong way to do this, friends. Fluff it how you like it. That is looking adorable. You can also curl the tails how you would like. Of course, we need to trim our tails because we don't want them to, you know, block our sign. So I'm not going to dovetail today. I'm just going to cut it at an angle. And if you're undecided on how long you want it, you know, you can always take ribbon off, but you sure can't put it back on. So cut gingerly. So stinking cute. Well, I'm really happy with the rough fluff. We'll come back in once we're all done, friends, and get that final fluff done. But so far, so good. All right, now we're going to add our second bow stack into this bottom right set of ties that we pointed out earlier. And again, press that all the way down to the center of those ties. Give it 3 really tight twists. You really want that to be good and anchored. And then just trim off that excess bit of tie. I like to take those bits and then just kind of fold them down under just so they're not pokey for myself or my customer. And now fluff out your bow. So we've got our rough fluff of the lower bow. I'm going to trim those tails a little bit. They can be a tad bit longer if you'd like because, you know, they're hanging from the bottom. But it's totally your preference. I would just say my general rule of thumb is unless it's intentional for specific types of wreaths, I don't like my ribbon to hang longer than the lowest point of my deco mesh, but that's just a personal preference. That is looking amazing. Let's move on to the next step of our wreath. Here's what it's looking like so far. Very pleased with it. So now we need to cut some tails. So remember, there are 18 sets of ties throughout our wreath between the upper and the lower level. We've used 2 of them for our bows. So now we're down to 16. And when it comes to adding tails in, depending on how full my deco mesh is, sometimes I add tails to every single available set of ties. Sometimes it's every other. And I think because we're also going to add some greenery in for this particular wreath, we'll do every other. And again, we had 18. We've already used 2 for the bows. That gives us 16. So we need 8 sets of tails. So go ahead and set your wreath off to the side and pull that ribbon back out. If you're new to my channel, my crafty friends, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. If you love all things wreath making and DIY step-by-step tutorials for door decor, please go ahead and hit that subscribe. I've got new videos uploading each week. And if you're enjoying this video, give it a thumbs up. Okay, so we're going to make 10-inch tails, and we need to fill 8 of those ties with tails, and I like to put 2 ribbons per. So I'm going to make these 10 inches in length. So I'm just going to find the 10-inch mark on my measuring board, hold it with my fingers to mark it, and fold that guy over 4 times because I want to variegate my ribbon. So we'll do 4 ribbon sets in one half of the ties and 4 ribbon sets in the other. So I'm going to fold this over until I've got 4. And then I'll cut that ribbon off. Run your scissors right up through the middle. And now we've got 4 10-inch cuts of this variety. We'll do the same thing with our black and white check. And I'm going to do, for the 1.5-inch ribbon, friends, I'm going to use, or excuse me, cut it at 8 inches. All right, I'm going to marry the black and white check with this tan and black and white trim, and then the cream and black striped with the brown and white striped. I'm going to go ahead and cut the ends at an angle ever so slightly You can dovetail if that's your preference. So I think I'm going to start out at the top here, and I just lay the 1.5 inch right on top of the 2.5 inch, and I center it, just eyeball it, fold it in half to find that center, mark it with your thumb, pinch and pleat, push it into a V shape, add that down into your ties all the way to the base, 2 or 3 super tight twists, and take your snips and trim off the excess bit of your tie. I always fold those down under just so they don't poke. And then fluff your tails just a little bit however you like. So you can see here, friends, why I like to cut the 1.5 inch a little bit shorter so that that 2.5 inch can still peek out and get lots of visibility. Same thing. 1.5 inch on top of the 2.5 inch, center it with, just eyeball it, fold it in half, making sure I had the pretty side up. It's hard to tell with that black and white check. Pinch and pleat, fold it into a V, add it way down to the center of your ties, 2 or 3 super tight twists, and trim off that excess bit of tie. Fold that out if you'd like, fold that down, excuse me, if you'd like. I think I'm going to leave the other couple of ties at the top alone for now and just add some tails in at the bottom, and I go every other. And so now that we've used 1 of each on the top, we've got 3 of each on the bottom. So there are 9 ties on that bottom level, and we've got 6. So I'm going to just go back and forth between the 2 and then skip a tie and get these sprinkled in. And I'll meet you back here. All right, friends, I've added all of my tails back in. So let me show you what I actually decided to do. So we've got, remember, we've got our bows on opposite corners. And then we added a set of tails in the other corners on that upper level. So then on that lower level, we had 9 sets of ties available. And we had 6 total tail stacks, because remember, we married the 2.5 and the 1.5 inch together, and we had 3 of each kind. So what I did was I added those 3 tails just on the corner that did not have the big bougie bow. So there's 3 tails here and 3 tails up here. And it turned out really, really cute. Now this is your wreath, so go ahead and add as many tails as you'd like. You can add them to every single set of ties if you would like, or none. It's totally up to you. But once you get your tails added in your wreath, take your snips and go back through your wreath and trim off all of those tails that we didn't add ribbon stacks to, because we're totally done with these tie-off tails now, and we want to get them out of the way. So take a minute to work your way through your wreath, cut those excess ties off, and I'll meet you back here. Adorable. Hopefully your glue gun is still plugged in. If not, go ahead and get that plugged in and turned on so it's heating. All right, friends, we're on to the final step. We're just going to add a few, or lots, depending on your preference, bits of greenery. I've actually got this bush left over from a previous project. It's probably, gosh, 3/4 or better full. I believe I got it from Hobby Lobby. So I'm going to cut this tag off off and trim this guy down, I'm going to go ahead and add all these pieces in. And so I'm just going to trim the stems right at the base of the bush here. And then we'll see how we want to further break that down. So we actually had, looks like 5, excuse me, stems. They are sliders, so you can move those greenery bits up and down. I'm sure yours work the same way. Nearly all florals do. But what I'm going to do is I want to get as many out of each stem as we can. So I'm actually going to separate them in half. So you can see the main stem, and then we've got 1, 2, 3 sliders, or pieces I should say. So I'm going to cut that guy in half. Woo, we sent it flying. So I've got piece 1. I'm going to take a fraction of a drop of glue and put it right there where the sliding piece meets the stem, just so it doesn't fly off when we're sticking those guys in. This will be a smaller one. You basically want, an 1.5 inches or so of stem available to glue. So I'm going to take a few minutes and cut this down. I'll probably separate each one into 2 pieces, and then I'll meet you back here. Okay, I've got that all trimmed down. I have 9 full pieces, or full half pieces, I should say, trimmed, and then 2 stragglers that are pretty thin. So we'll save those 2 for any bare spots that we see at the end. So we're going to go ahead and grab that wreath, bring it back to our workstation, and we're going to add our greenery pieces in. So if you are more comfortable, you can take your greenery pieces. If you can see, friends, these are probably 6 inches in length with a 1 to 1.5 inch stem. And we're just going to determine where we want to place it, run a bead of glue, 1 inch or so bead of glue, and then shove that down into our wreath, just making sure that that stem is hidden and your greenery is really grabbing onto something. I like to dry run place mine first, just to make sure I'm really happy with that placement, and then I go back through and glue. You can certainly do it however you'd like. We are almost finished. I sure hope you enjoyed creating with me today. If there's something you'd like to see me do in the future, or some instruction that you'd like to see, feel free to drop that in the comments. Take a peek at this after picture once we're done. All right. Our masterpiece is finished. This is a beauty. Love, love, love. Let's see how big it actually ended up being. I'm going to guess, 28 inches or so. Looks like about 25 inches in diameter and 8 inches at its deepest point. So it's a good sized wreath. It was a lot of fun creating with you today, friends. If you like this tutorial, give this video a thumbs up. Thanks for stopping by, friends. Happy crafting.